Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, also best-selling author, and every single day I help others unlock potentials and guide them to succeed. Today on the show, we have another fascinating guest. On the show, we interview celebrities, entrepreneurs, business CEOs, multimillionaires, athletes, artists to find out their path to success, their keys to success, and how they are able to overcome challenges and adversity. And our next guest today is definitely somebody who could shine some light into this because he is so good at what he does. He's been inspiring, motivating, empowering people from all over the world to grow, succeed, and improve. I've had the honor of sharing a virtual stage with him recently, and when he spoke, people stopped, they listened because they wanted to learn as much as they can from him. And hence, I said I needed this person on my show, and hence I'm very, very excited to have him here. He is known as a person with the effective way, the person who does business at the speed of heart, and of course, he is a person who has the $1 million feeling, which I'm going to ask him more about because I want to have that $1 million feeling as well. He loves to guide business leadership and team members to generate and embrace a company-wide heart-centered posture, which allows them to create that better, thriving culture to allow them to succeed and grow and prosper as well. So please welcome corporate performance strategist, coach, speaker, author, and show host, Mr. Brian Baird.
How everybody's doing. I'm so glad to be here, and just so I can be pointing out my experience as a business coach is also reflective of my ability to be a 51-year entrepreneur and also a hypnotherapist. I combine those skills. So for the time being, I'll just put on my other background, which shows you the effective way.
Awesome. 51 years of entrepreneurship. That means what, you came out of the womb and started selling stuff?
Yeah, it's like that, right? So yeah, I was if you don't count the lemonade stand, my first business, I was 12 years old.
Oh, wow.
And it was a lawn cutting business. I had bought a broken lawnmower at a yard sale or a garage sale, whatever you call it at the time. And I repaired it for like $1.50. And then I got into the lawn cutting business. So in some ways, to say that's it, the rest is history. It was nice talking to you. But life wasn't always that smooth.
I see. Well, okay. So have you always thought that you're going to be an entrepreneur at the very, very early age then?
I never made it a connection between what I was doing and the word entrepreneur. I just knew that I came from more humble means, and there were things that I wanted materially that were not available to me if I didn't do my own thing. There's a lot more to the story than just that in terms of parents were challenged with their own journeys and having their own issues with learning how to navigate the world, and as a result, my being tutored by my parents was more in the place of just how do you survive as opposed to how do you get to be able to do something bigger and greater. And I won't tell you that it was an overnight thing of being greater, if you want to use that phrase. I want to be careful with that phrase because it means different things to different people. But I had made a decision very early on that I didn't want to be pigeonholed by the limitations that my parents set for themselves.
So if it wasn't for entrepreneurship and everything that you've achieved so far, what would have been the other path that you would have taken?
Hard question to answer because, when you're a kid, you always think about all these things you want to be. So I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be a detective. I wanted to work for the FBI. I wanted to be a best-selling author. Probably part of me wanted to be an actor. All of those things, though, were never attached to a you can do it or how to do it type of thing. So, and I certainly didn't have the connections to sort of explain to me that I could learn how to network or do these other things to make those things happen. So even though I had kind of gotten the entrepreneurial bug at a fairly young age, it didn't really materialize in its current form until I was well into my 20s. The weight of my parents' limitations still hung in the balance here. And I ended up for a brief period of time in the United States Navy, which was a beautiful education for me because I was in the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program. So I learned that all the things that where you can't do it, I had to make a decision as to whether I could do it or not. Like I was told when I was in school, I wasn't that smart a kid. I wasn't that studious. And so people would just equate how much attention you pay to details in studying to how smart you might be. And I was even told, don't bother going to college. I have teachers who said, you're not college material. So when I went into the Navy, I had, in the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program, I had kind of a come to religion moment, so to speak, where I was like not doing well. I was in the process of failing out of some segments of that training that were going to make or break my ability to stay in the program. And I had I won't call it an epiphany, but I had this kind of like decision-making point where I was just going to go, you know what? I'm all in. I'm just going to put all the energy I can into this and see what comes out from that. And I ended up having an extraordinary turnaround in my life just because I now knew that I could do what I wanted to do if I set up the goal to do it. And I'll just do the backstory to that was I was doing okay. I was holding my own in the discussion about physics because we weren't doing a lot of math on it in this preliminary portion. This was before going into the full-blown program. I was in this what they call pre-nuke school. And I was holding my own with the physics, getting a C's, passing, whatever the case may be. We didn't call them C's back then. It was all on a 4.0 grade scale. But the math part was flummoxing me big time. I don't think I had passed a test. And some of that might have been, again, the limitations you're taught, like it was. So I sat down, I was actually on a bench someplace in Orlando, Florida, where my training was being held, off base, just having this conversation with myself. And my decision was just do it. If you fail after doing it hard, that's a very different story than if you just quit. Mm-hmm. For some reason, I had this quit versus fail discussion. So I went back and kind of doubled down my energy and efforts. I went to every help session I could get for math because the math in nuclear physics is not trivial. And then we had this comprehensive exam, and I was still marginally passing exams at this point. But then we had this comprehensive exam that we needed to pass in order, or even if, well, you had to pass it. What you did in the grade defined what level you might be studying in the next portion of the training. So I studied and studied. I even, like the night before the exam, I didn't really sleep. I was like dreaming about strange geometries and colors. It was just a very bizarre experience at that time. And then I took the test, and then we all went to lunch, and we were going to come back after lunch and get our grades. And I couldn't have told you I passed or not. That's how uncertain it was for me. But, so there was an ensign that was teaching a class, and he was handing out the test to everybody and announcing the scores and everything like that. Mine wasn't being handed out yet, and the scores were getting lower and lower and lower and lower. Like if you had a 72, I think 70 was passing. If you had a 72, he was telling people this, and I hadn't even received my test yet. So I'm going, oh, I freaking failed. I failed. I was like so fraught with doubt at that point that I was even had it what it takes to be even a human being. Like there was a dread because he's calling out the scores that he was going to, I was going to not only fail, but I was going to fail in front of everybody. And he handed out the test with the following statement: some people, when they come into this program, shouldn't be in the program. And I'm dreading it even more, and some people do remarkable things. And I want you to know that the next test I'm going to hand out was the highest grade in the class.
Oh, wow.
I got a 3.96 out of 4.0 on the comprehensive exam.
Wow.
But I didn't have the confidence to so when that was read out, it was just utter shock. Yep. what it resonated for me, and it's carried with me the rest of my life, is that whatever I set out to do, I can accomplish.
Mhm. Wow, that's incredible. Now, you talked about the limitations that you were taught and brought up with the weight of parents. You talked about how the teachers told you you're never going to make it. That discussion that you had between you and yourself about failing and not failing and succeeding, how did you make that decision to go, you know what, I'm going to just do this no matter what anybody says? And then the period time of you actually doing the work, when it got hard, it would be very easy for you to go, you know what, I tried. How
Right.
did you maintain that mentality to keep on pushing?
Well, some motivation was I didn't want to go back to the setting I came from.
Mhm.
Um, there was another motivating thing. A little bit of it was ego, and that is that if I could accomplish this, then I would have respect or some other flavor of that kind of thing. Oh, you did the nuclear power program, it's like, and I
Did you go
and I
back to your
looked at the
parents and go, ta-da?
no, I didn't really, I kind of distanced myself from family. After I had this experience, I realized how much I was being held back by their energies. So at that point, I kind of kept my distance. The I went to college after the nuclear propulsion program in the U.S. Navy. I went to college, got a degree in computer science, also a minor in electrical engineering and mathematics of all things. And so there was this ability to sort of like, whatever I set out to do, I can accomplish, and whatever I quit, I won't. So there was this very, very clear line that got crossed when I was having that conversation with myself, that I no longer want to be seen as limited or a failure or unaccomplished or whatever the case may be. I no longer wanted to be seen that way. I don't look at it the same way. My life today is like, whether I'm visible or not, it's really not important. And whether I'm seen as successful or not, it's not important, because I look at what's important to me now. But back then it was very important. Public image for me was very, very important. And I spent a great deal of time building out this image that I wanted everybody to see for me by accomplishing those things that supported that image.
Right. Now, I want to dwell more on how you separate yourself with family and people around you that didn't give you the right energy. I know a lot of my clients, a lot of people out there who are struggling between, what should I jump into real estate? Should I jump into business? I've been in this career for so long. Should I stop doing that and jump into this that's brand new? And usually it's the people who love them, family members, friends, who goes, "Ooh, that's too risky. Don't do that. Why don't you stay in this a little longer? You spend all this time in this, stay in it," and all that kind of stuff. How does one try and separate that mentality of, okay, well, yeah, they're trying to save me or they're trying to help me, but this is truly what I want to do, without breaking that relationship too much?
So much of my work has to do with teaching people to go into a mode of thriving instead of surviving. We get these survival-based stories that we live by. Their parents give them to us. Teachers can give them to us. Peers can give them to us. It could be even generational, like grandparents, or even family stories that come along, like, your grandfather was a cop, your dad was a cop, you're going to be a cop. That's all you know. That's all that's just who you are. Meanwhile, what if I wanted to be an artist? So what is it that makes you thrive? Is a paycheck thriving? And it can be, or is a paycheck a prison? So you get to make these decisions, and actually, let's rephrase that. You get to act on these decisions, because not every decision you make will you follow through on. You just mentioned it before. I could have decided to succeed in that program and quit 3 hours later. I changed my mind. It's not worth it. Whatever it is that's going on. So your decisions really mean very little. It's the actions, the commitment and actions that you put into play that make the difference. And it's not a character flaw if you don't stay with your commitments or anything like that, because maybe you're getting feedback that that's not the right commitment. Yet the really important thing is what makes you thrive. Now, going into real estate by itself, for example, I have been involved in real estate over the years. I've owned various kinds of property. I have even done property management as a sort of a side effect of being in the property space. And I could tell you, I have more passion for the people that I work with than I do for that business. So it's not a place for me to thrive. Mm-hmm. I don't belong in real estate. I don't thrive in that space, and it's not important to me. If I had to work in real estate and just to get the paycheck, it would be more of a prison for me. And it would be, the reason for working would be just because I'm in a place of thinking of survival and just getting the check, mm-hmm. or whatever the case may be. I do have people I've known over the years who have taken certain jobs because it was about the money. And in the end, they had miserable lives. So always, in my opinion, when you're making your commitment, it's the commitment that focuses on what makes you thrive, what's aligned for you. So if you're an artist, become an artist. Mm-hmm. If you're a writer, become a writer. If you're fascinated by real estate, go into real estate. If you love people, do something that involves serving people or working with people. That is what's going to make somebody have success in the truest form, because do what you love and the money will follow. Mm-hmm. That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, when did something happen where you go, you know what? I will be this corporate strategist, or this person who goes and helps businesses grow. Was there an instant that you go, this clicks, this feels right, and share with us that story that you went through?
I don't know if there was any single event that brought this to thing, but as my own journey was going along, I was always doing things that involved business. I had owned many businesses over the years, made millions. So I sometimes like to say spent millions, but sometimes you lose it. Yeah. Over a lifetime, I've worked in corporate America a handful of times, very small handful of times, almost like by taking my entrepreneurial flair and bringing it into a company. Out of my entire life, that was probably 12 years that I was doing that, maybe a bit more. Mm-hmm. The rest of the time I was doing it for myself. I don't even think it was 12 years, like less than 11. And I have all the other time was always built on building something, set on my building something. So that energy of building something very much aligned with me, and I think most of us, one way or the other, we have a creative something inside of us. Right. Very often we suppress it for practicality. But in some ways, for me, being an entrepreneur, which finally was a word that settled in on me after a long time, I didn't even know really what the word meant. But being an entrepreneur gave me an opportunity to be creative. Entrepreneurs aren't really great business runners in many cases. Sometimes they are. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm more interested in building something and then letting somebody else run the thing. So that my passion is in the creative side of this. So I build businesses and I teach other people to build businesses. And that's how I kind of evolved into what I'm doing today with the Effective Ways, is going, I have built businesses in various capacities in all kinds of arenas, everything from technology to other factors, mostly in technology though, whatever that means, because it could be all kinds of things. And then the secrets of how to make your business known, promote it, how to market it, how to grow it, what the mindset is. It's not my favorite word, mindset, because they now look at heart set as more important than mindset. But what is that heart set, mindset piece of the equation that makes it so you are more likely to succeed than if you just try to go it alone? And then the other thing is there are too many people out there who are interested in taking your money for the promise of helping you with your business and not necessarily giving you the foundational work that you need. Right. It's always and I shouldn't say it's always, but often I learned kind of from my own experience. So it's, I didn't have mentors along the way. And I realized in a fairly later period of time that I needed to be a mentor for people because I didn't enjoy that experience. Mm-hmm. Someplace along the way, I did allow mentors into my journey. It was much later in the game, but they ended up working on me personally. That was that kind of coaching that was involved. It wasn't really about the business. The business mechanics came very easily to me. That's why I'm now a hypnotherapist, because it was a nice logical add-on to because when you're in business a long time, you start to develop certain understandings of the human condition. And when you study hypnotherapy, it completely expands your ability to interpret what motivates people, both as team members or potential business partners or clients or whatever the case may be. You get to look at people with a much more honest way of interpreting the signals and all these other things that happen, so that when you're working with somebody in business, you're doing the best possible way to serve them, as opposed to serving yourself. And that's what I also think when you look at what I do for business today and why it's a thriving thing, is I don't focus on how to win the deal. I focus on how to get to make it so that you are attractive and people want to work with you.
Right.
A very different kind of thinking. So
now, you just mentioned you help a lot of people create their businesses, build their businesses. You yourself have done that a lot, and hence the effective way. Now, most people start off thinking, you know what, this is effective. I am doing it the right way. What are some of the most common things that you go, let's tweak this a little bit so that it's more effective? What are the most common no-nos or common failures that people go through when they're starting to build a business?
Well, let me highlight something that we probably all witnessed during the COVID experience we just came out of, or maybe still at the edge of it, but whatever you want to, wherever you think we are. When you look at the shutdown and the recovery from the shutdown and all these things that took place, what businesses survived and what businesses kept going? Now, this is generalization. It's not 100% true. But you look at, especially in the smaller business spaces, the companies that went under or failed during COVID were the ones that were pretty much focused on money. The ones that survived are the ones that had a culture that was human connected and heart centered and things like that. Now, I will, as I said before, there are going to be exceptions to this discussion, but in very broad strokes, what I'm saying is true. And then even in the wake of this, you had quiet quitting, and which was employees sort of like just resigning while still working because they're working out strategies to leave. And then we had the resignation, which is where people are going, I'm not going back.
Right.
I realized that I hate my job, or whatever the case may be. I want to do something better that makes me happier, brings me more alive. So people are starting to wake up to the idea of thriving is very important to them. And the businesses that were all about the mechanics and the nuts and bolts of money and all those other things, they were driving those employees out the door. And the ones that were heart-centered, people stayed. People even doubled down on their giving to make it work.
So what would you say some of the companies out there should do or should not do to create that company culture so that it is heart-centered? What are the most common things that they're ignoring?
First thing is that leadership needs to stop thinking like an MBA. So as I said, money first thinking is not attractive anymore. We're seeing some of this right now. Right now we're in the United States. We're right in the middle of the United Auto Workers. The big three companies are on their fourth day of shutdown as we're talking, because the leadership of the company, especially high-end executive pay, is many, many times, like 300 to 400, 500 times the pay of people at the bottom end of the company structure. And they're saying, but we do all the work. We should be rewarded also for your success. And it's been very tone deaf. I've watched the interviews of the leadership of these companies, and they're going, we gave them great packages. What's wrong with them? They should want to come back to work. That's the kind of philosophy that's going on there. And they're going, you're just giving them a job. You're not giving them a sense of appreciation. And this is what makes a company work or not work. I know that, like, you see examples of how companies like Patagonia, which is an apparel company for those who may not know, or outfitting an apparel company, and They're a public benefit corporation. They have what they call a B Corp. Their mission is not money first thinking. They have social initiatives, a lot of it environmental, but they have social initiatives. People who work for them love that. They go there, a lot of them go there to work because of that. And they've built a culture that's very much about humanness as opposed to moneyness. Money should be a healthy byproduct of a good company, not the reason for it. And that's where I stand in my work. And that's where I'm helping people along the way, is that money first thinking is the first sign of a company that's not going to work. And to your question, if somebody goes, I have an MBA and I know what I'm doing, great, go ahead. But I have a feeling there's a good chance that with that kind of thinking, you're not going to have any loyalty in your team.
No, when a company comes to you and the CEO goes, hey, I really need your help, what's the first step? Is it where do you rally the entire company together, give a kind of talk and go, hey, this is what we're doing? Or do you go, here's some...
No, they've all heard speeches before.
So then
they've all heard speeches.
The
first thing you got to do is retrain the leadership. The C-suite's the biggest problem, right? Because and you got to find out who in the C-suite doesn't belong anymore. So you could own a company and not belong as a leader. You could be the president of the company and not be a leader. So, and that's what I'm witnessing in this United Auto Workers discussion is you got people who are they're just tone deaf to what's going on. They just don't get it. And so the first thing is to teach them about a heart-centered culture, a human connected culture, so that they realize is that everybody is important and not just because I'm the president, am I the most important person? Presidents can make tough decisions, which might not be as easy for people who aren't trained to do that. But those decisions don't always have to be purely money centered. I was, for a very brief period of time, for a few years, I was working with a company, and I got the phone calls that we're going to lay off a bunch of people. Company was already overwhelmed with the resources they had, and now they're going to thin another 10%. So I wasn't really involved in the actual machinations about what they did to make it happen, but I then sent over an article that said, here's a company that took a percentage of all the executive compensation and used it to keep the company from having to fire people or put people on leave or whatever phrase you want to use, lay them off. What's the popular expression? And the president of the company took that advice. And so everybody from one of the manager grade and up took a 10% pay cut so they could keep everybody. And then they figured out a way to compensate them in the end for that, because it was a company that had stock options, and they gave options to everybody. In the amount of money they gave up, they got stock options for that. So they ended up keeping that company going in a much more satisfactory way, rather than demoralizing them by making everybody do more work because they just got rid of 10% of the people. That's the kind of thinking you need out there. Some of these companies, it's like, wow, it's a rough season, 50,000 people go home, instead of figuring out a way to create loyalty.
Very, very important stuff. And yeah, I know a lot of people who have suffered through that because they've just gone through the cycles, right? Every single 8-10 years, they get laid off again because either the economy doesn't go well and it came back down again and whatnot, and they just get tired of that whole industry. Now, you mentioned before that it wasn't until later on in your career that you go, okay, I need some mentors in my life. I'm going to start having people kind of give me some guidance and whatnot. And from your perspective, it was more on the personal side and not the business technical stuff. Most people think that, hey, I need a coach or a mentor to really dive in to the X's and O's and the technical stuff of the business. Rarely do they look at the personal side of their characteristic, what they're how they're brought up and all that kind of stuff, the mental state to allow themselves to be a better business person. For you, was there something that you can share with regards to your personal side that really affected your business side, that your mentors kind of highlighted that you did not realize?
Again, I don't think there was any single thing that made me have this kind of evolution. I did become a parent a little bit later in my journey than many people. I was a 42-year-old first-time parent. And in many ways, I grew up with my daughter. I won't go into all the details. We don't have that kind of talk time available to us, but I will say that the idea that even though I was conventionally successful in everything I had been doing up to that point, I realized I wasn't happy. And I probably hadn't been happy for a long time, but I just wasn't aware of it. That's the important part. So many of us get caught up in our survival bubble. We just don't know what we really feel or about our lives. We're kind of like caught up in what the stories tell us we're supposed to believe. We don't necessarily know what we really believe or feel. So at a certain point, I have probably heard this phrase 1,000, if not 10,000 times in my life, which is that a smart person learns from their mistakes, which is the way I operated my entire life. A smart person learns from their mistakes. A wise person, however, learns from the mistakes of others. Mm-hmm. And when that finally registered, I had been talking to people about my unhappiness, not directly, but more like, how do you do this? What makes happiness for you? What makes your journey colorful and rich and things like that? And I was just aware that, first of all, not everybody has a sense of what the answers to those questions are, but also I was aware that those people who did weren't really operating in the world of the mechanics of business, because it turns out more money wasn't making anybody happy. It was something other than money that was making people happy as you're getting to these conversations. So I hired a coach, my first coach ever, my first mentor, to work on me, to put me in a place of being happy. And she had really good insights. I ended up, each of my coaches I would outgrow along the way, but I ended up going through a coach, working with him. And then once I reached a certain level, I'd go to the next coach and so on. And I will say that each one of these coaches that I worked with along the way have left marks on my journey that are very positive and rich and meaningful and frankly effective, because once I got to a certain point, I began to play around with hypnotherapy as also an inner work tool, and found it not only so powerful for me, but when I got a chance to show people what it was all about, it was working for them too. Uh-huh. And then I realized it was one of the most powerful things about our journeys. We're all leaders. We're all leaders. Yet the first person we need to lead is ourselves. And all the work I was doing was inner leadership development. Mm-hmm. And then once that was there, I became a better leader in general, because I was now more authentic, more capable of vulnerability, more raw, more understanding, more compassionate, more interpretive. I could see things more clearly now because I wasn't being bogged down by all my personal emergencies and urgencies and all those other things, because I was now looking at the world in a much more clean way and understanding that everything is about connection and relationship. And then once you get that figured out, all the other things fall into place much better. Mm-hmm. So now I take the hypnotherapy along with all the entrepreneurial history that I have, and I use that to create great leaders.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I don't really create the great leaders. I guide them to be great leaders. Not everybody can make the journey, mm-hmm. by the way.
And hypnotherapy is not a process where people go, I'm going to go to hypnotherapy to improve my business sense and to be more successful. What usually happens? Like when somebody comes to you, okay, I need some help with this, and you go, you know what? I have a method with you. Bear with me. It's hypnotherapy. But so what's the process that people go through that allows them to utilize this tool to let them grow?
Well, let's talk about what hypnosis, in my experience, really is. It's not a mind changer. It's the tool for education. Mm-hmm. And I'll illustrate that. Fong, when you were a little kid, just think of yourself when you're like 5 years old. You were just sponging everything up around you.
Okay.
Think about it. If you were interested in dinosaurs, you probably knew everything about dinosaurs that was to be known at the time. If you had a favorite TV show, you probably knew everything about it. If you were, whatever you were into, whatever you did. And frankly, this is why I also think parents who are having marital difficulties, who think they're hiding it from the kids, they're not hiding anything, because their kids are sponges. They soak up the energy. They, even if they don't understand what's going on, they know something's going on. So you can't hide things from kids because they're just sponges. Well, why is it that they can do that? Why is it that they 5 years old soak up everything so easily? And it's because their brain is in essentially a hypnotic state most of the time. It's in hypnosis we learn. And hypnosis is not some discovery that we apply to people. Our brains naturally will go to hypnosis. And so when you look at what is hypnosis really, it's a place where we get to process and learn things in a faster, more rich way than it would be if we were trying to treat it as an academic approach. Mm-hmm. So that's why that's so powerful and so important. And frankly, much of the time, I don't really give people a therapy session. I might just give them a suggestion experience using hypnotherapeutic language, because it's the suggestion that makes the right effect happen for those people. And by somebody who's got some personal leadership challenges, it's going to show up in their leadership in their business. So the idea is everybody who has a business that they need to turn around in some way, I almost guarantee you it's the set of personalities who are running the company that are actually causing the issue. It's just not the employee quality. It's not the client. There could be market and timing trend issues that show up. Maybe they're in the vinyl record business and everything was going to CDs and then later on digital. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you're just operating in a place that's just going nowhere, and you have to kind of regroup and whatever the case may be. But sometimes you can't even see that because you're caught in the story. Whereas if you're like more in touch with yourself, you can go, looks like records are going away. Why don't at the time, why don't I get myself into the CD business? Mm-hmm. Or as things were going along, I think I need to develop something digital or whatever in order to be still in business and to thrive instead of survive.
Right. And then 40 years later, it's like, oh, I wish I didn't throw out all my records because now they're vintage.
I gave those to my daughter. She has them.
Oh, good. Before we let you go, I have to ask the $1 million feeling.
Yes.
Speaking with
we switch backgrounds. We switch backgrounds for that. So we talked about the effective way.
That was great.
And then we'll talk about the $1 million feeling now. So
no, speaking with you, it sounds like it has nothing really to do with the feeling of actually having $1 million in hand, because
no, it's an illustration. You're right. It's just like if you had $1 million given to you, how would you feel at the moment? You would probably feel, oh my gosh, this is great. Now, it's really not about the $1 million, though.
Right. And what exactly is that? How do people harness that feeling without actually having it?
If you want access to $1 million feeling, one needs to, and I say needs, I very much focus on the fact that they want the $1 million feeling, but there is some work that needs to happen. And it goes back to this discussion I had before, is that everybody is their own leader. Everybody is a leader, but the first person we need to learn to lead is ourselves. And there are a few more properties, but they're like the first 4 properties I work with everybody in their journey to give them something like $1 million feeling, is to start to figure out where are they in the category of evaluating trust, truth, power, and love in their lives. So for a lot of people, and you see this a lot in societies, they don't have a high level of trust. That's why personally, I didn't get a coach until many, many iterations after hearing about wise person learning from the mistakes of others, because I didn't trust anybody to hear my deepest, darkest secrets and failures, and which is, you kind of need to be honest with somebody who's a coach,
right,
to get them to be a proper guide for you. The other part about not trusting anybody is this: there are energies out there, and I certainly exhibited some of this, where I didn't want to be seen as weak or unknowing. That was part of my survivals. I knew everything and I was very strong, capable.
Right.
So that's another reason why people don't necessarily get coaches or therapists or whatever the case may be. They don't want to be seen as weak or unknowing. So between those two things, like not wanting to be seen weak or unknowing and not trusting anybody to share stuff, you don't necessarily get an opportunity to do the work. However, once you're opening yourself up to that and you get to find out that, and I just use trust as an example, but a lot of people who don't have trust don't have good relationships. I can tell you that was my story. I had a 24-year marriage, but we didn't trust each other through the whole marriage. And it didn't stop us from having a 24-year marriage, but it certainly stopped us from having a powerful marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we're not married at this point, but we've both grown in very powerful ways since. But the idea here behind the finding, the $1 million feeling is becoming balanced in true love, not conditional love. Having a sense of personal power that allows you to be vulnerable, living with a sense of truth, which means you're not letting the stories that don't belong to you influence your lives anymore. And also having a sense of trust. Because if I can't trust you, Fong, then I really don't trust myself. And if I don't trust myself, I really am not going to trust you. So, and that, by the way, suddenly you see, oh, if I trust myself so I can trust you, that means I have power too. So you start to see those four things all interconnect. Mm-hmm. So when you get somebody who can guide you to that place where you have healthy levels of personal power and trust and truth and proper perspective on love, that's when you have $1 million feeling.
Awesome stuff. I'll still end up asking you this question, but I thought that was a good way to end it. But if you were back on the world stage and you have one message to share with everybody else in the world, what's that one message you want people to remember Brian for?
It's right on the screen. You are always too young to not enjoy life.
Perfect cue, eh? Before I let you go, I got 5 quick questions for you. Rapid fire, give me the first thing that comes to mind. Stranded on a desert island, one food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence.
That's a tough one because I love food. Oh gosh. So one food, maybe just one food I could eat over and over and over and over again.
You won't get fat, you won't get unhealthy, you're still gonna be fit and shape.
But I have to live with that one food. Is that what you're saying?
That's it.
So it has to be a food that I really, really love. I'm going to say chocolate, dark chocolate. That's the only real chocolate.
Awesome. Unfortunately, I'm a white chocolate person, so.
Oh, because that's not really chocolate either.
I know it's not chocolate, but anyway. So Hollywood calls and goes, "Hey, Brian, we love your story. We'd like to do a biopic on you. Who would you cast to play you?"
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt shows up at your door and says, "Hey, Brian, buddy, I just got casted. Let's hang out. Let's have some fun. Let's get to know each other." And you go, "Hey, Brad, no problem. Let's go out and I'm going to show you a night." So what does that night look like?
I'm a homebody. Let's go to dinner, have a chat, and then we'll come back and we'll watch a movie. I'm a homebody. I've long gone past nights on the town. I don't need them. I just like meeting people and hanging out and getting, rich interaction with them. Mm. And I don't find when you're going to like a dance club or something, I find that that's a little different than the energy I have these days. When I was younger, that was great, but
so
I'd rather just go have dinner and let's sit around and talk.
So Brad goes, "You know what? Let's screw dinner. Let's just stay in." And you go, "Yeah, no problem. Give me a few minutes. I'm going to whip up something amazing for you." What's your special dish that you can provide or serve?
I make an amazing Italian spaghetti type sauce.
Awesome. Now you're on this road trip and it's hours and hours on end. What's that one song you don't mind listening to over and over again?
Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd.
Awesome. And my last question, give me one number from 1 to 4.
3.
1, 2, 3. So if you had to use a rollerblade as a metaphor for success. How is success like rollerblade?
When you fall down, you will only get better when you get back up.
Nicely done. So that's how success is like rollerblades. Thank you very much for your time and your stories and your tips here. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
$1,000,000feeling.com, theeffectiveway.com. There's contact information there. Mm-hmm. In my middle initials case, they could go to briankbaird.com if they want to.
Okay. And any final words from you?
I'm sorry?
Any final words from you?
Well, the final words that I have is congratulations, Fong, on just having this great conversation. It was fun. Thank you for sharing time with me.
Hey, awesome. Thank you very much for that. For everybody, he's Brian. My name is Fong. Until next time. Today is the day to unlock your peak potential. We'll see you later.